Welcome to USFL Today. I'm your host, Angelo. Make sure you follow me at USFL Today on Twitter. Make sure you also follow our YouTube channel at USFL Today. Set your notifications and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of this series, 8 teams in 8 weeks, or any of our other great shows, which we have scheduled and lined up for you for now through the rest of the season. So definitely check all of that out. As I said, this is 8 teams in 8 weeks. It's our third in the series. It's training camp week, and I've decided to go with the Philadelphia Stars, the USFL Runners-Up from last year. If you recall, the Stars were 6-4 during the 2022 season. They started off kind of slowly, suffered a quarterback injury, but then they got hot over the second half of the year and rode that wave all the way to the championship game, including an upset of the Generals in the playoff semifinal, and then falling just short against the Birmingham Stallions in a fantastic, hard-fought championship game. They are coached by Bart Andrews, who is back for his second season. He's one of the 5 coaches that are back for their second season with the USFL. A little continuity there. And Cookus is one of the couple of starters from the end of the year that will be starting this season off in the same spot. Cookus, of course, as you know, not the starter coming out of camp last year. That, of course, was Brian Scott. Scott suffered that injury. Cookus took over. Took him a little while to get warmed up, not very long, and he proved to be a capable, if not exceptional leader, taking his team all the way to the final. Of course, Cookus re-signing was one of the bigger stories this offseason for the Stars. It was a question for quite a while what he was going to do, and hopefully he's all healed up from his championship game injury. Backing him up last year was KJ Costello, who saw little action in that championship game, and he will be fighting for a backup job with Kevin Thompson, who was signed this offseason, and this guy really intrigues me. I feel like he can give Costello a run for that second string job. He played at Sacramento State and absolutely lit it up over 3 years, 52 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, and really proved to be accurate as well. He played, incidentally, with Isaiah Henney for 1 year of the Pittsburgh Maulers, who also went to Sacramento State. Small tidbit of info for you there. The running game for the Stars last year was kind of middle of the pack, although it took them a little while to get going. They were much better over the course of the second half of the season as the team saw a resurgence. Matt Colburn, of course, the leading rusher, has returned for this year. Darnell Holland is back this year as well. The Stars need to find a second running back who can contribute. Cookus was their second leading rusher last year, and you can't have that. You need someone else to step up and take the load off of him. You've got Dexter Williams, who was signed in the offseason. He went to Notre Dame, scored 20 touchdowns, spent time with Green Bay. He was drafted, as a matter of fact, in the 6th round of the NFL draft. And he's been bounced around to a few other teams, practice squads, things like that. The other running back they signed, Jordan Scarlett, same kind of situation. He was a 5th round NFL draft pick for Carolina. He played 9 games that year for them that he was drafted before knee and ankle injuries derailed his campaign and his career. But he's now in camp with the Stars, eager to prove, along with Dexter Williams, what he can contribute to Matt Colburn and Darnell Holland. That offensive line was very good at opening holes, very good at protecting Cookus as well. So the Stars must really like their offensive line because they've only brought in a couple of guys to compete from last year. 2 tackles, big Tristan Taylor. He was undrafted out of East Washington. And also Aaron Servais of Syracuse, very durable player. I think that the Stars are looking for durability out of their new signees because you got Servais out of Syracuse. He played 60 consecutive games to close out his career at Cuse, all starts, by the way. And then the other signee was guard Shamarius Gilmore. 59 out of 60 games he played in his collegiate career. By the way, Servais plays 3 positions. So they're also seeking, in addition to durability, I think they're looking for some versatility. out of their line so that they can shuffle guys around when they need to. Moving over to the wide receivers. This was one of the wide receiver groups that, to me, kind of went unheralded, if you will. But when you look at the numbers, the Stars had 6 wide receivers with over 200 yards, or 6 players with over 200 yards. One of those receivers was tight end Bug Howard, who was the team's leading receiver with 371. Right behind him, only 1 yard behind, was Jordan Sewell. Then you look at the receivers coming back. Chris Rowland is back. Devin Gray is back. DeAndre Overton is back. These guys all had 200 yards or more receiving. Gone is Maurice Alexander, who also had over 200 yards receiving and a ton of special teams yardage. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he's gone to the Detroit Lions, of course. And then there's a group of new receivers that have been brought in, looking to at least fill in one receiver spot, become a punt returner. No one else, by the way, returned punts for the Stars last year, aside from Alexander. So I would imagine they're looking for someone else to step up out of this group of Samuel Acom, Corey Coleman, Carrick Wheatfall, Devin Williams, and Terry Wright. So you've got a lot of wide receivers in camp, 5 returnees and another 5 new guys. We'll see who sticks and who doesn't. Should be very interesting. We talked about the tight end, Bug Howard. He was their leading receiver for the year. He missed a couple of games with injury, and when he was out, their tight end production from a receiving yard standpoint, completely disappeared. So he's a really important part to their offense. He also had a few touchdown catches last year. I think it was 3. The only other tight end on the roster from last year is Pro Wells. He caught 1 touchdown. They brought in a couple more tight ends to compete behind Bug Howard, and I really like one of them, Ryan Izzo. He's a New Jersey guy. He was drafted by New England a couple of years ago in 2020, and he played 12 games for the Patriots before he suffered an injury and was released. He's bounced around across 5 different NFL teams, in and out of practice squads and off-season rosters. So I believe that he stands a very strong chance to be the second tight end. The wild card in the tight end competition this spring is Lawrence Delabetta. Hope I said that right. He played his college ball at West Florida and at Western Kentucky. I don't know a lot about Delabetta. Special teams. Of course, we talked about Maurice Alexander. He's gone. The guy had like 750 combined return yards between kick returns and punt returns. Of course, he also had that unbelievable punt return in the playoff game, which propelled the Stars past New Jersey in the semifinals last year. And so they're looking to replace that production. We'll see who steps up to take that position. Roland and Holland, like I said, did some kick returning last year and can pick up the slack, but someone's going to have to be the main guy. As far as punting and kicking, Louis Aguiar has both jobs. He did well enough kicking, place kicking, but only 35 yards per punt last season for Aguiar. And I'm a little surprised right now that there's not at least some competition to push him a little bit, but I suppose the Stars just like him well enough to keep only one kicker and free up a roster spot for a different position. We'll see how that all works for Philadelphia. Let's talk about the defense now as we move past the offense and focus on some of the positives for this Philadelphia defense in 2022. They had 3 players with 30 or more solo tackles. They're returning 9 of their top 10 tacklers from last year, so there will be continuity. And the team was 3rd in the USFL in sacks. So they definitely had the ability to get to the opposing quarterback. Now, let's talk about the bad. The Stars defense gave up the most yards per game last year, 345. So there's some work to do there. They gave up the 3rd most points last year. So there's some work to do there. Keep teams out of the end zone. And then They also gave up the most rushing yards in the USFL by over 220. So they definitely need help clogging up those running lanes. Let's talk about what the Stars are doing to address that situation. On the defensive line, you've got four defensive tackles returning from last year, including Nelson, Owens, Lattimore, and Holly. But they've brought in a couple of more big wide bodies, 300-plus pounders, to help out a little bit and get some more production from the defensive line. You got Tyler Clark, who was signed. He went to Georgia, and he was with Kansas City Chiefs and the Washington Commanders in a camp preseason situation. And then Jordan Scott was also signed. He's like 311 pounds out of Oregon. He spent time with the Minnesota Vikings a couple of years ago. So there's your competition there. 4 returnees and 2 new guys. We'll see who wins out. Defensive end, Adam Rodriguez is the holdover from last year. Pardon me. Second in the league in sacks with 9, very effective. And 2 new defensive ends have been brought into camp. You got Ali Fayyad. He was with Toronto in the CFL last year. He played 4 games. They won the Grey Cup, so he had a positive experience in Canada. Now here he is playing for Philadelphia. Carson Taylor is the other defensive end that was brought in. He was with the Bears last season for training camp before getting released. As far as the linebackers go, you got Sewell returning, Moore's returning, and Coney's returning. The 3 of those guys combined for 78 tackles, 2 picks, and 1 sack. And they'll be challenged in camp by a group of 4 different linebackers. You got Joey Alfieri, who's been with 2 or 3 NFL teams, Giants, Eagles, and Niners. Jordan Genmark Heath at Notre Dame and UCLA. This guy is from Sweden, came to the U.S. at age 14, and he's an excellent linebacker. He spent a little time in Canada. He played for Saskatchewan about a month or so, and now he's bringing his skills to the Stars linebacker competition. Darius Hodge is another of the new signees. He was on the Bengals active roster in 2021. He was undrafted and made the 53-man squad. After being released from there, he did spend some time with the Dolphins too. And Gaddafi Wright is the 4th linebacker who will be competing for a spot on the 50-man final roster. The cornerbacks, of course, are led by all USFL Channing Stribling, 7 picks last year. He got a look from the NFL after the USFL season was over, and it was a question mark as to whether he was going to return. He might have gotten drafted by the XFL. There was a chance that he would go there, as many other USFL players jump. But thankfully and fortunately, he made the decision to return to the Stars and continue to lead that defense. Joining him in the with the cornerbacks is Amani Dennis, who was solid all year last year. He had 30 tackles. And then you've got Mozzie Wilkins, who was also very effective last year. If you recall, he had that big interception in the playoff semifinal against the Generals, picking off Luis Perez and returning it about 88 yards deep into Generals territory to set up the Stars for their first touchdown. So there's a lot of competition there. There's the 3 returnees coming in as well to join them is a new cornerback, Stanford Samuels, the 3rd. He was on Green Bay's active roster and was also with the Bears and Raiders last year. So a lot of experience. Overall, when you look at what the Stars have done and the guys that they have brought in, got a lot of guys with experience that have actually participated in NFL games and in preseason and in camps. It's great to see. The level of play should definitely increase. Moving over to the safeties. What a room. Yeah, Cody Brown with 41 solo tackles, Evan Worthington, Ladarius Wiley, all returning. Wiley with 28 tackles of his own, and then Joshua Moon, who didn't play that much last year, is the 4th of the returnees. Got a couple of other defensive backs that will be joining camp for the Stars. One is Denzel Williams out of Villanova. So he adds some Philly flavor to training camp. And then you got Devin Taylor, who spent time with the Commanders last year. This guy had 9 interceptions in 35 games across his college career. So when you look overall at the Philadelphia Stars, they're looking to upgrade in those areas where they need help the most. They've got to find a way to shut down the running games of their opposition. They've got to find a way to keep teams out of the end zone. So these are the two areas, to me, that stand out the most when I look at their defense. And again, on the offensive side, what you're really looking for here is who is going to emerge as that second productive running back to take some of the load off of Matt Colburn. From a coaching standpoint, you can't argue with the job that Bart Andrews did last year. He kept the team steady while they were going through their moderately rough patch in weeks 3, 4, 5 before they turned things around. And he's a veteran of spring leagues, so he knows how to lead the team. The thing I'm interested in now is as the Stars settle in Detroit, will there be any fan support for Philadelphia there? I think they're more apt to see some fan support in Canton than they will be up at Ford Field. However, that remains to be seen. I think that if you're going to put a number on, try to predict how many wins the Stars are going to have this year, boy, I mean, you look at the North Division, and it's going to be hyper competitive, more so than last year. You've got Michigan, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago in our 8 teams in 8-week series, who have made a ton of upgrades, and they have a full-fledged home field advantage behind them. You look at the Pittsburgh Maulers, who we will be previewing in an upcoming week. They've made all kinds of changes and upgrades to their roster and their coaching staff, so they can only improve from here. And then, of course, you've got the defending regular season North Division champs, the New Jersey Generals, who have upgraded as well and are looking to repeat. So to try to put a number on how many wins the Stars will come out with, considering the competition that's going to be served up in the North, I mean, is 6-4 undershooting? I don't know. I feel like that's a safe number to go with, a repeat of last year's record. I also think that with a couple of bounces their way, they can go 7-3. So that's sort of where I see the Stars. I see them fighting for one of the 2 playoff spots. Who will they be fighting with for the other one? Man, I think it makes for a fantastically interesting race come the end of June. And when you consider that Michigan and Philly wrap up the season in Detroit in week 10, kind of got my fingers crossed that game is for a playoff berth because I want to see a big crowd in Detroit, and I would love to see fans of both teams offering support there. So that's kind of my take on how I see the Stars season going. They're a 6 or 7 win team. And I think they're at least one of the 2 best teams in the North Division. And they've gotten better, in my opinion. The ball bounces a funny way, though, doesn't it? That, however, puts a cap on this week's 8 teams in 8 weeks. I hope you enjoyed my solo effort into putting forth this information and preview for you. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at USFL Today. Make sure you follow our YouTube channel, also at USFL Today. Set those notifications and don't miss a program. Next week, we will have our 4th, halfway already, through our 8 teams in 8 weeks feature. So we will see you then. Thanks for watching.